Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad that you found us here on YouTube and have joined our tribe of survivors, and I want to welcome all the new subscribers that have joined us in healing Post Narcissist. And today I really want to talk about the trauma bond, and it gets glazed over a lot just because everyone wants to talk about, the love bombing and the discard and the things that the narcissist actually did. But the thing is, it all is based on the trauma bonding. And what prompted me to do this talk today, I've talked about trauma bonding a lot, but I think I heard the most worst example of the trauma bond that I've ever heard. And it was a woman who was abused horribly as a child and was in a cult, got sucked into a cult at the age of 6 years old. And she was in this huge network of this cult, and she had this one main abuser, this man who raped her repeatedly. But when they did the trauma bonding on her, they would set her up and hook her up to all these batteries and give her electric shock all over her body by one person in the cult, and then they would remove it all and then hand her over to her abuser. And the abuser would comfort her and kiss her and rock her to sleep and tell her everything that she needed to hear to feel like she was going to be all right and safe. But then her abuser would hand her off to other members of the cult, and they would hook her up to all these batteries and give her electric shocks again. And that cycle keeps going over and over again. So this is the most extreme trauma bond that you can possibly think of. So when she was being handed over to her abuser and being comforted, it's almost as if that was like a painkiller in her brain. Like serotonin was being released in her brain when she was being held and stroked and fed and felt safe again. It's actually a chemical reaction that was happening in a child's brain, like a painkiller, after feeling so much pain and then making the pain go away. Okay, so I want to go from the most extreme trauma bond, that story that I've ever heard, and I want to bring it into what happens all the way into the trauma bond, what happens in a narcissistic relationship. Okay, because we seem to think that, this is so different, you can't compare it. But the thing is, what's happening inside our brains is the exact same thing. The serotonin that's getting released and the feel-good chemicals that the narcissist is purposely giving us and causing the reaction in our brain within the relationship is the same. So I'm going to try to walk you through this and explain to you guys how this abusive relationship that you were in was actually, forefronted, and groundwork was laid at the beginning of the relationship, the same way any trauma bond is done. So we're all familiar with the trauma bond that happened, Stockholm syndrome, the actual event that happened in Stockholm, Sweden, with the hostages in a bank robbery. But trauma bonding happens when any time someone wants to control someone else. So it doesn't matter if you're in a hostage situation, if you're in a cult, if you're in even, pimps and prostitutes. The pimp will get sometimes the prostitute addicted to heroin in order to trap them, make them feel good with heroin, and then control that and use that as a weapon, really in a trauma bond. They purposely get them addicted to them because they're the ones that are supplying the drug. And there's extremes in trauma bonding. And the thing is, again, these feel-good chemicals in your brain are what the narcissist is doing, because the trauma bonding that happens in a narcissistic relationship is the same. It happens a little bit differently because there's no threat at the very beginning. Instead, there is only this love bombing, huge doses of love that we have never felt before. So we are getting these serotonins in our brain, this feel-good chemical, this love, this huge amount dosage at the very beginning. So there's no threat at the very beginning, but there are these huge amounts of love that we've never felt before. And that's why it's so it's so intense, it's so almost traumatic that we had this feeling of love for the first time that we've never really felt before. And the thing is, they put it on so heavy and so like thick on us that when they even take it away, their love away a little bit and say, and leave us, they know when to leave us, and they're testing us to see how much attached we are to them. Because if you have that kind of love being put on you and then someone takes it away, it's like a withdrawal. And they are doing this at the very beginning to almost get us addicted to them. Just like, a pimp and heroin or a drug dealer gets you addicted to that drug. Or, your kidnapper, starves you for days and then gives you food, and you're so grateful and happy even though they're the ones that abused you in the first place. So when you're dealing with the narcissist, they're switching the role, but then they're going to go back and forth. So it's the exact same trauma bond. Okay, so after they pretty much get you addicted to their love, they'll take it away as a form of abuse. Okay, and it is abusive for them to play with your emotions like this, and the way that they're going to get you so attached to them, just like the 6-year-old girl that was being abused, because the man that was her abuser was like the guardian within the cult and had to be attached to her. So they did this ritual of abuse and things to get her so attached, like she was going to always do whatever he wanted and go with him without any question being asked, because she would be like, felt like he was her world and she couldn't survive without him, even though it was her abuser. So when you're with a narcissist, you get so attached to them, you almost feel like, you can't live without them. And you're so attached to them, like you need them for love, you need them for sex, you need them for comfort, you need them for, even money. Like they also, and the next part of this is the isolation. Like in my relationship with my ex, he started really isolating me. Every time that there was, an opportunity for me to kind of go out with friends or family or anything, that's when like things would come up, like where I had to be with him instead because we were doing something that was really important, either for our businesses or for our relationship or for something. And he knew exactly, the more time I would spend away from him is the more time I would get like comfort and love and maybe happiness and serotonin in my brain from somewhere else. And he couldn't have that. So that's why they isolate you, because they want to make it so the narcissist is the only person that you go to feel good and to find happiness and feel love and feel everything. So they isolate you from family and friends and even work. Like I quit my job. He isolated me from everywhere so that he would be the only person that I needed for anything. And when he took any of that away, any attention towards me away or anything, I went through withdrawals and it made me want him. And I would get very upset when he wasn't there, because that's the trauma bond. They make you want them in that way, and it's very crafty the way they do it, because after the isolation is the dependency. They make you so dependent on them that it's really hard to see you have a life without them, because you now need them for everything. You need them for love, for money, for comfort. They'll attach children to you if you have children with them. All of a sudden you feel like you can't pay bills or take care of yourself or do anything without them. Like they make you feel like you can't see your life without the narcissist. And that's trauma bonding, where you are so attached and addicted to them that you just never see a life without them. And I really sympathize for a lot of the men that are listening to this that were with a woman who was a narcissist, because the weapon that women use is sex, and that is extremely powerful weapon to use in trauma bonding, to abuse you all day and use sex to give you to deny sex to someone who really wants it, and then gives it back to you at the exact right time to make you feel so good, and then and being able to just barely dose you enough to control you is something that female narcissists do, and I know that they do, and it's just so evil the way they use that as a weapon. So I really sympathize with you men that are listening. And I have a lot of horrible memories of the things that I missed in my life because my ex made me feel like other people in my life were not good for me. There was a lot of events that I wanted to go to with family and friends, and he would like tell me that, no, don't go to that, convince me that whatever event it was bad for me because the people that are there are unhealthy, misaligned, and are leading a bad life, and I shouldn't get like mixed up with that because they weren't healthy, they didn't exercise, they weren't vegan, they everything that they do is bad for the earth. Like he would just demonize other people in my life to make me feel like he was the only one that was good for me. And so slowly doing that every time something would come up in our lives would make me more dependent on him. So after years of me being isolated, I felt like I didn't have anyone in the world. Like I didn't have any family or friends I can rely on. I only had him, so I need him so badly. And then the real abuse starts when he starts, devaluing me. Because at that point, the trauma bonding really takes the turn for the devastating worse, where now your abuser can really do anything that they want to you, and you're going to stay with them no matter what, is what we feel like when we're in these narcissistic relationships. Now that's why it's so hard to break free from them before they discard you, to understand what is happening. Because a lot of us, like I was, he discarded me overnight and was off with someone else. And I was so trauma bonded to him. That's why I kind of curled up on a ball for 3 months and just cried, because I didn't know, all of a sudden I realized I didn't know how to live without him anymore. I didn't know how to feel love without him. I didn't know really how to function every day, because every day I was so isolated except for him. And then when he was gone, the huge withdrawal of the feel-good things that he did for me were just gone, and I almost couldn't produce my own. Like, it took me a long time to recover, and that's what narcissistic abusive relationships are. And it's kind of hard to convey that to other people, that you weren't tortured, with electricity. You weren't, hooked on heroin from your abuser. You weren't beaten sometimes, it's really hard to say how what's the chemical reaction in your brain is the same, but it's really hard to tell other people what you've been through to feel this trauma bonding carnage that you're going through now, but it's all the same, and it's not our fault. Like our narcissist might as well have comforted us after giving us electric shock treatments just to get us trauma bonded. They didn't do that, but what happened in our brain was the same. So the abuse is the same within us, and that's what is hard to get other people to understand. Now, the one last thing I want to iterate is, after we get away from the narcissist and time has gone and we've learned to live and everything's fine again, the thing is, there is always for us that remembrance of the feel good that we had with them. We're always remembering the love bombing stage that we went through with them. So when they come back, and they will always come back, it's just a matter of, when, not if. But when they come back, like, people wonder how we get sucked in for the hoover. Why would you ever go back to the narcissist? And this happens a lot, and I see it over and over again. And what you have to try to explain to people is like someone who was addicted to heroin all of a sudden see a needle maybe in front of them. That's because they know that if they go back to the narcissist, even though it was abusive, they know that they're going to get that hit, that feel good, huge amount of love, right? And that's why it's tempting. But and we all, this is what this is all about. We all tell ourselves and remember the abuse and know the processes and be strong, because it is tempting, and no one can blame. And it's easy for someone on the outside to just, because you wonder why women go back to their husbands that beat them, because or it's all the same. It's all the same. The reason you go back, it's for those chemicals in our brain that are going to get released from that love. I mean, it is tempting, but I want everyone out there to please stay strong. Please use outlets like this channel to find people in the comments and talk, to find support for all of us, so we do not, do not go back to your abuser. Do not go back to the narcissist. You got to stay strong. And I have to fight this as well all the time, and just be ready, because it could happen to me at any time as well. And I do this channel, and I talk to a lot of you guys to help me never to go back to my abuser. And he was an abuser. He didn't hit me. He didn't chalk me up full of drugs. He didn't electrocute me, but he abused me with love. And that's, to my brain, that's the exact same, really. So please tell me in the comments if there's anything that you want me to talk about, or a subject that you want me to touch on. I'll be happy to do it. I love reading your guys' comments, and I love seeing you guys support each other in that. And I want to thank everyone who's donated to this channel. I really appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video, as we are all survivors post-narcissist.